Why is it that some people walk into a room and without saying a word, everyone pays attention? Why do some voices naturally command respect, while others constantly get drowned out? It's not because these people are richer than you. It's not because they're smarter, more charming, or born under some lucky star. And it's definitely not because life just handed them power on a silver platter. The real reason is far more uncomfortable to hear. There's a harsh psychological truth that most people never learn, but those who do carry themselves differently for the rest of their lives. 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli wrote about it in a way that shocked the world, and even today, most people would rather ignore it because it doesn't sound nice. It doesn't sound polite. But the people who live by it, the ones who quietly shape the dynamics in every group they enter, they know that being respected has nothing to do with chasing approval. And here's the brutal part. The harder you work to be liked, the less people actually respect you. Every time you bend, every time you swallow your words, every time you go along with something just to keep the peace, you're not earning goodwill. You're sending a message that says, I will accept less than I deserve. And people hear that message loud and clear, even when you don't say a word. That's the ugly truth most never face. Respect and approval are not the same thing. You can be liked and still be walked over. You can be agreeable and still be ignored. You can be endlessly kind and still have no weight in the eyes of others. Machiavelli's truth is this. When you stop trying to please everyone, you start gaining the power that approval seekers never touch. Think about the moments in your life where you bit your tongue instead of speaking up. Someone cut in front of you in line and you said nothing. A friend canceled on you for the third time in a row and you shrugged it off with a smile. At work, someone took credit for an idea you brought up first, and you convinced yourself it wasn't worth the trouble to correct them. These moments might seem small, harmless even, but what you don't realize is that every single time you stay silent, every time you go along just to keep the peace, you're sending a signal. You're telling people you are safe to ignore, safe to use, safe to take advantage of. You may believe you're doing the right thing by avoiding conflict, that being agreeable makes you easier to like. But here's the brutal reality. What you are really doing is training people to walk all over you. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you're lowering your own value in the eyes of everyone around you. You're teaching people, often unconsciously, that your boundaries don't exist, that your time doesn't matter, that your ideas can be stolen without consequence. Now here's the part most people never want to hear. Those individuals who never seem to have this problem, the ones who are never interrupted, never dismissed, never overlooked, they aren't just lucky. They're not floating through life with special treatment because fate decided they deserved it. They're applying a principle that Machiavelli understood half a millennium ago. A principle that is as dark as it is effective. People respect consequence, not kindness. They respect firmness, not flexibility. They respect those who don't need approval to function. If you keep trying to be everyone's safety net, the dependable backup plan who bends and breaks to keep others happy, you'll find yourself empty-handed. Because here's the truth. Approval is cheap. It costs people nothing to smile at you, to thank you, to say you're such a nice person. But behind those words, there is no weight, no real respect. And when the moment comes where your voice should matter, where your presence should command attention, you'll be overlooked because you've already taught people how to treat you. There's a dangerous weakness hidden inside the desire to be liked, and most people never see it until it's already taken control of their lives. When your goal is to be liked, you make yourself predictable. You become someone others can read like a children's book. They know exactly how you'll respond, because deep down they know you can't afford to risk disapproval. They know you'll laugh at their jokes even when they're not funny. They know you'll agree with them even when they're wrong. They know you'll show up for them even when they've canceled on you 5 times before. And once you're predictable, you're disposable. Here's the harsh truth. People do not respect desperation. It doesn't matter whether it's desperation for money, desperation for attention, or desperation for approval. Humans can sense it, almost like a smell, and when they do, they instinctively lose respect. They might not say it out loud. They might still smile at you, might still call you a friend, might even thank you for being so understanding. But behind those words is the quiet judgment that you're someone who can be taken for granted, because you need their approval more than they need yours. Think back for a second to the people you genuinely respect. Are they the ones who bend over backward to keep everyone happy? Or are they the ones who seem perfectly fine with being disliked if that's the price of staying true to themselves? Respect doesn't grow in the soil of approval seeking. It grows in the space where someone refuses to compromise their self-worth just to be liked. That's why people who are comfortable saying no, people who don't chase attention, people who would rather be alone than fake their way into acceptance, end up being admired even when they're not the warmest or friendliest in the room. Machiavelli captured this centuries ago in one of his most famous lines. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. He wasn't telling rulers to become cruel tyrants. He wasn't saying you should terrify everyone around you. What he meant was that love without consequence is fragile. People will betray love, discard love, and take advantage of love when it costs them nothing. But fear, by which he meant consequence, creates respect. It forces people to think twice before crossing a line, because they know there's a price to pay. This doesn't mean you walk around barking orders or trying to dominate every conversation. It means you understand something simple but powerful. When people know you don't need their approval, when they know you'll walk away before you beg, when they see that their opinion doesn't control you, that's when they start to respect you. Respect doesn't come from chasing. It comes from the refusal to chase. And every time you trade your self-respect for a scrap of approval, you're choosing weakness over strength. Say it and let it sink in. Respect over approval. Now that you see why being liked is a trap, we have to talk about what actually works. Respect. Not the fake politeness people put on when they're trying to avoid conflict, but the deep, instinctive respect that changes how they treat you the moment you enter the room. Real respect isn't built on charm, talent, or success. Those things might earn admiration, but admiration fades the second it's inconvenient. Respect lasts because it's built on one principle: consequence. When people know that crossing you comes with no cost, they will cross you again and again. It's not because they're evil. It's not even always because they want to hurt you. It's because human beings push until they feel resistance. And if you never provide resistance, you've already told them that your time, your energy, your dignity can be taken freely. You've made yourself safe to disrespect. Once that happens, it becomes nearly impossible to reverse. But what happens when you flip that dynamic? What happens when people learn that if they waste your time, they lose access to you? What happens when they realize that if they disrespect you, they don't get another chance? Everything changes. Suddenly, the same people who used to take advantage start thinking twice before they speak. They measure their words more carefully. They respect your boundaries more quickly, and they begin treating you like someone who matters. Not because they suddenly decided you're wonderful, but because they understand there's a cost to treating you otherwise. This is the dark power of respect. It doesn't come from begging or explaining why you deserve better treatment. It doesn't come from being endlessly patient, endlessly kind, endlessly forgiving. It comes from boundaries that mean something, boundaries that are enforced. And here's the key. Once you start demanding respect, it reinforces itself. The more you hold the line, the more natural it becomes. The more people see that you won't accept less, the more they begin to treat you as if you were always this way. Respect compounds. Now compare that to approval seeking. When you demand to be liked, you give up control because you're waiting for someone else to decide whether or not to give you what you want. But when you demand respect, you're the one in control. You don't need their permission. You don't need their validation. You take respect by refusing to accept anything less. That refusal is your power. Think of the people in your life who command respect effortlessly. Do they explain themselves endlessly? Do they compromise their values just to keep everyone comfortable? Do they beg people to understand their worth? Number. They simply do not tolerate disrespect. That's it. That's the difference. They treat respect as non-negotiable, while the powerless treat respect as something they have to earn by giving more, sacrificing more, being nicer than everyone else. But you cannot earn respect by giving your power away. You earn respect by keeping it. Say this out loud and let it settle in. My worth isn't debatable. Here's a reality most people don't realize. Every single interaction you have is a battle for control, whether you know it or not. From the smallest conversations to the biggest decisions, someone is always trying to steer the outcome, and someone is always yielding. The question is, who is it? Who decides what happens? Who sets the tone? And the brutal truth is, if you don't know who holds control, then it's not you. Approval seekers hand over control without even realizing it. Every time you adjust your behavior to make someone like you, every time you bite your tongue to avoid conflict, every time you say yes when you mean no, you're literally giving someone else the keys to your life. You are surrendering authority over your words, your choices, your feelings. Every compromise made to be liked chips away at your autonomy, until you no longer recognize how much influence you have, or have lost. And it's insidious because it often feels like kindness. It feels like diplomacy. It feels like you're simply being agreeable. But in reality, it is self-erasure disguised as morality. You become whatever others want you to be. Your opinions, your voice, even your identity bend to their desires. Your self-worth begins to depend on their approval. And once that happens, they can manipulate, guilt, or coerce you without ever lifting a finger. That is why approval addiction is so dangerous. It's not just about feeling good or bad. It's about who decides what happens in your life. And when you hand them that power, you are powerless by default. Contrast this with the people who refuse to need approval. They act freely, speak honestly, and make decisions based on what they want, not on what others expect. They set the terms of every interaction rather than accepting whatever is offered. They keep control over their presence, their time, and their energy. And because they do, the people around them respect them instinctively. There's no tension, no negotiation, no manipulation. Respect and influence flow naturally to those who are in control of themselves. The stark truth is this: needing approval is a form of slavery, dressed up in the illusion of kindness. When you constantly seek others' validation, you aren't connecting with them authentically. You're performing for them, shaping yourself into what you think will please them, hiding parts of yourself, and silencing your voice. That is not a relationship. That is not influence. That is voluntary surrender. But the opposite is liberating. When you stop needing approval, when you stop shaping yourself to fit into someone else's expectations, when you stay true to your own principles, regardless of their reactions, you reclaim your power. You become the person who sets the terms, not the one who bends to them. You no longer teach people how to treat you. They learn it themselves. And that is the kind of power that changes everything. Let's take a step back and look at the full picture. For too long, you may have believed that pleasing everyone, bending for others, smoothing over conflicts, and sacrificing your own priorities is the key to being valued. The reality is the opposite. Every time you chase approval, you give away a piece of your power, and over time, the world begins to see you as less significant, less consequential, and ultimately less worthy of respect. Respect is not something handed out for smiles, politeness, or sacrifice. Respect is commanded. It is claimed. It is non-negotiable, and it flows naturally to those who refuse to settle for anything less than their true value. Refusing to seek approval changes everything. When you stop performing to meet other people's expectations, when you set boundaries and uphold them, when you act according to your own principles instead of bending to theirs, people begin to see you differently. They start to notice your presence, value your time, and treat your energy as something that cannot be taken lightly. You become someone who matters, not because you are liked, but because you refuse to allow disrespect to occur. The room you enter shifts. Conversations take a different shape. Decisions begin to bend toward your terms because you have made it clear that you are in control. That is power. That is influence. That is respect in its purest form. Now I want you to reflect. Are you ready to stop being everyone's backup plan? Are you ready to stop constantly adjusting to others' whims just to earn fleeting approval? Are you prepared to step into a place where your voice is valued, your presence is recognized, and your boundaries are honored? This is not about being harsh or unkind. It's about being firm, being consistent, and refusing to let your own worth be dictated by the whims of others. It's about commanding respect instead of hoping for it. Here's the affirmation to seal this truth, one that I want you to repeat in your mind, say aloud, or drop in the comments. Power over approval. This simple statement is a reminder that your value is inherent, that it cannot be negotiated, and that you do not need the validation of others to assert your place in the world. Start practicing it in small ways. Say no without guilt. Speak your mind even if someone disagrees. Walk away when your time is not respected. Each step reinforces the power you already have, but may have forgotten. Remember, this isn't a feel-good message or a motivational platitude. This is the raw, unfiltered reality of human psychology that Machiavelli observed centuries ago. Respect is not given lightly. It is not a product of charm, niceness, or approval. It is the result of standing firm, creating consequences, and refusing to allow anyone to diminish your worth. From this moment forward, your mission is simple. Stop pleasing everyone, enforce your boundaries, and claim the respect that you have always deserved.